Welcome to the Embodied Mystic podcast, where we explore the path of feminine awakening and luscious womanhood. Together we'll be diving into topics like sacred sexuality, feminine embodiment, spiritual healing, and soulful relationships. I'm your host, Tamara Fael, tantric mentor and Aries hype girl, here to guide you back to the temple of your body and fall in love with being a woman. I look forward to journeying together. Hello, lovely beings. Welcome to the Embodied Mystic podcast. And if you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Tamara Fael, and I'm a sacred sexuality coach and feminine embodiment practitioner, and I'm super happy to jam with you here today. I'm going to keep this introduction really brief because you might be able to hear I'm a little bit sick, but today's episode is so beautiful. It's with a dear sister of mine, Larissa Mulder-Barge, who is a conscious sex, relationship, and intimacy coach. And this was honestly such a fascinating conversation. It was really, really honest and vulnerable and generous of Larissa to share so much of her experience with free birthing, which I hadn't really fully understood what it even was before this episode. And she also shares very honestly about how her erotic experience shifted throughout the stages of her maiden to mother journey. So when she was pregnant, after birth, a year postpartum, and beyond. So yeah, this episode is just full of truth bombs and is just such a fascinating listen. I had so much fun having Larissa on the show. So together we talk about what is free birth, how to prepare for free birth if it's something you're curious about. We shared about our desires for birth, what the personality wants versus what the soul wants. We spoke about how birth brings us into our sovereignty as women. And we, also really interestingly, we kind of dove into what can be done about painful sex after birth. Maybe you're someone who has experienced painful sex. It's definitely a really challenging thing to navigate. And Larissa spoke so beautifully about how women who are postpartum can navigate that with their partners in a really conscious and beautiful way. So let's get into it. I'm going to share a little bit more about Larissa and we're going to get straight into this episode. Larissa Mulder-Barge is a relationship, intimacy, and sex coach, as well as a facilitator of embodied sensuality and sacred sexuality. She has over a decade of experience creating safe and nourishing spaces where people are guided back to themselves. She is passionate about supporting couples in transforming their relationships through subtle yet powerful tweaks in the way they communicate and relate, giving opportunities for shifting out of the boxes and conditioning of what relationships should look like, slowing down and softening in a way that allows them to unfurl their own unique blueprint of their relationship and reclaim the power and innocence of their sexuality. As always, I love hearing from you. Nothing makes me happier these days than receiving a DM from you guys, just sharing your insights from these episodes. So I would absolutely love to know how this one lands. Slide into my DMs. My Instagram is @Tamar__Raphael. So it's TAMAR__RAPHAEL. L, and let me know what you think of this episode. I'm sending you so much love in this wild, deep, intense Scorpio season, and enjoy this episode with Larissa. Larissa, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this juicy topics.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get in and talk all about free birth, your experience, and also, intimacy after baby.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one.
Yeah. So, Larissa, maybe we start just with how did you get into becoming a teacher of conscious intimacy? What's been your journey around that? Let's start there.
Okay, well, I'm really blessed to have actually grown up in a retreat centre. And so from very early on, I was given the opportunity to experience a vast range of different workshops and trainings, a lot of which were Tantra retreats and workshops. And so in my teens, I was already quite embedded in the world of Tantra, and not just Tantra, but conscious sexuality work. And I guess it's just been such a big part of forming who I became, who I am. And yeah, so I don't feel like there was a conscious decision. It's just been something that's just naturally evolved from pretty early on.
That is amazing. Yeah, so it's been a really natural thing for you just to teach what you've learned and what you embody.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, very natural evolution and just slow unfurling, particularly as then I think where there was more of a conscious choice was when I decided to work much more with couples and relationship work. And so then it was that my background in Tantra and conscious sexuality just fused and supported the path that I chose around working with couples and relationships. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I'm curious, did you always know that you wanted to be a mother? What was your connection to motherhood before you became a mother? Because you have the most adorable little boy.
Thank you. He is really awesome. He is very awesome. It's interesting. He just turned 1.5 years. So he's in a really exquisite, amazing phase coming out and discovering who he is. And I always was so clear, having babies, being a mother it wasn't even a choice initially. It was just always, obviously, that's just what's going to happen. And then through multiple relationships and becoming a stepmom, becoming a godmother, I eventually landed in a place where I was actually really clear that I wasn't going to have children. And
I didn't know you were a stepmom.
Yeah, I was previously in past relationships some years back.
Wow.
And so I got exposed to how exhausting it is to be a parent.
Does it feel different when it's your child? Your biological child, I should say.
That is such a tricky one. I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not yet the parent of a child at the age of what I was a step parent, so I'm in a very different phase. So that's a really tricky one. I felt and who I am now is very different to who I was then. So it's really hard to answer that with clarity. But I gave myself fully as if I was his mother, and I was. So that's a really tricky one to answer for sure. Yeah. But so having gone through parenting wave, knowing how exhausting it is, and seeing the impact on relationship, it became clear if I was to have a child, I'd want to have a child with someone I wasn't in a relationship with, so that it was part-time parenting where I could have a relationship with my partner. I thought that's going to be the way to resolve this. And and just before I met my husband, somebody had asked me, "Oh, where are you at in relation to having babies?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm really clear. Like I'm gone past that wave. That window's closed now." And then within, I think maybe a week, me and my husband got together. And when we got together, it was this instant, we're having a baby. And there was just something in the alignment of us. And and I guess also this being our son, Suriel, wanting to come through, that comes beyond any decisions of the mind in a way.
That is magical. Yeah. That is really, really magical. And your husband, he also has a like a tantric and a conscious sexuality and relationship coach background, right? He's very much in it as you are.
Yes, yeah, and that's also a really big blessing for me. He's co-facilitator of a tantric sexologist training in Denmark, and so his work is very much in tantra, sexuality, relating, embodiment, consciousness. And so I feel like, both of our work comes together, not just in our work life, but it really does come together in our relationship. And I think particularly since having a baby, it's like, oh, wow, I have no idea how people who don't have our backgrounds, how they can maintain a really healthy relationship once having children. And so I am very grateful for what we both are able to bring to the relationship with our background and understanding of relating.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm so excited for us to get into more about conscious relating and intimacy and sex and all of that, like how that shifts throughout pregnancy and after having the baby, because I know that is such a huge shift, like on so many levels for a woman. But I think first I'd love to just ask you about free birth, your experience of that. Like, what is free birth? And then we'll move on to like all the juicy intimacy stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so free birth, I think different people may define it slightly differently, but for me, free birth is birthing outside of the system. And so I wasn't in medical, what's it called? Like care. I wasn't seeing midwives through my pregnancy, and I gave birth at home without a midwife. And so midwife was like unassisted birth in the sense of medical support. And I'm really passionate about free birth, and also feeling like, I want to put in a little piece here that feels really important, that I really believe that these babies that come in and their souls, they really make a choice around the way they're going to come in. So however we decide we want to give birth, I think it's really important that we prepare ourselves for all eventualities. Yeah. I so often see women who get very focused on, I'm having a home birth, but then something happens and they end up in hospital and they're not prepared for it.
Totally.
And then they're dealing with a lot of trauma and shock of things not going the way they want. And also, similarly, I know people who've been set on going to hospital to give birth, and their baby arrives before they even get there. And then it's like a whole other shock going on. So I feel like, it's really important. Like one of my big journeys around free birth was I prepared myself for everything. I processed through all the possible eventualities so that I could really give myself to the moment, not knowing if what I was choosing was going to be the outcome, hoping it would be. And and this piece of also, if we on our human personal level are choosing something, our soul might have a different need. And so you often see, like with a home birth, that the baby does get born at home, but then the mother has to transition into hospital. And I really see that as a piece of that baby coming in, needing to be delivered at home and have a natural birth, but the mother still needing to have some experience of her birth experience being in hospital. We come in with all sorts of things that we don't understand and know, but there is bigger plans in
And also, like, what I've understood is that,
birthing is such a primal state of being that it can really bring up just like, what do we need around us as women to feel safe? And so many of us have grown up in the West, or in some kind of Western society, and we have grown up with doctors. Many of us, I think, maybe not you, Larissa, because you had a very hippie upbringing, but many women who have become more spiritual and who have joined the conscious community, like myself, like I grew up going to doctor's appointments, very much in that. And it's like, as much as I might desire a home birth or a free birth or a orgasmic birth or a whatever birth, the fact is that, when it comes down to it, I might actually need to go to a hospital to feel safe, to move through that experience. And so, as we kind of open up this subject, which I also feel passionate about, creating a space for voices like yours, Larissa, I just want to make sure that, what we're sharing is in no way taken as the best way to birth or the way for everyone, because really every woman needs to find what's right for her and her family.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the main thing. The most important thing, I think, in giving birth is being in an environment that you feel safe. That's it. And if feeling safe is in hospital, then that is totally 100% where you should go. Because if you're not feeling safe and supported, then that's what's going to be inhibiting you in having a smooth labour. So I really equally am also totally in support of people being exactly where they need to be for themselves. And for myself, the thought of being in hospital was terrifying.
Yeah, I can get that. And it's funny because I'm just like, Larissa, so brave. It's so brave that you did the whole thing. So did you have an ultrasound?
So I did actually end up having one in the very beginning when I was 10 weeks, because I was not in the UK and I wasn't insured. I didn't have health insurance for outside of the UK. And so I just wanted to check and know that everything was okay, because if something did go a little bit eek while I was abroad, having learned the cost of how much it costs to be in hospital with things, I was like, oh my God, need to know if everything's okay. And then after that, I didn't have any more. And that was actually in the Netherlands, where they're also so supportive of home births. And so the reason why I actually chose free birth, I wouldn't have actually gone there initially, but during the whole COVID time, home births were written off. There was no possibility to have a midwife and give birth at home. And also, birthing centres were also closed. All midwives were sent into the hospitals. So if you were birthing in the system, the only choice you had was to go into hospitals.
So if you wanted support from a midwife,
it had to be
like a medical, it had to be in the hospital.
Yeah. And so I am so grateful that this happened, because it pushed me to the place of feeling like, okay, I need to learn everything that I can to be able to do this alone, because there's no way I'm going into a hospital.
Wow. So it was during COVID, it was during that time that you gave birth?
It was actually post-COVID, but it was before midwives were funneled back into home births and birth centres. Yeah. Or I suppose some of my pregnancy was still in COVID time. Yeah. And what was really interesting is being in groups that were set up to support people who were free birthing, seeing so many women coming with feeling so angry and upset that they were being forced into making this decision. Whereas, because it wasn't their choice, they didn't want to free birth, but because they didn't want to be in hospital, they felt like it was their only option. Which, same for me. I wouldn't have initially thought to free birth. I would totally have been having a home birth. And if that wasn't possible, I would have gone to a birth centre. That just felt like the right thing to do. But then, given this whole twist, And after really becoming, I spent my whole pregnancy being very passionate about learning everything I could learn.
Totally.
It created such a huge shift in me stepping into my own authority, me being much more in myself than before. I would have been much more looking outside of myself to other. Is this okay? Is this not okay? And not actually really listening into myself. And so for me, it was such a gift and a blessing that I really inhabited myself in a different way as a result. And so I'm very grateful for it. Even though it was not what my initial plan had been, it really was a big gift.
I hear many mothers sharing similar things. Like there's something about the experience of becoming pregnant and birthing where so many women become really much more like fierce about their rights, about their right to choose what's right for them and the baby, despite what other people are saying.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, especially I think so many of us are prone to caretaking other before ourselves. So when it's just ourselves, we can act very differently, where suddenly ourselves is not just ourselves. There's a whole other being here. So there's a whole different level of fierce protectiveness that can come in.
True.
Yeah.
It feels like an important part of that initiation from maiden to mother, actually.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And so I spent 9 months studying, preparing myself. My studying was learning about every single thing that could possibly go wrong and what to do in those situations to really, really learn what is possible to deal with at home on your own without the medical system involved, and getting really clear about what are the things that I would 100% go to hospital for. And the place that I landed was, okay, if I was to have a cord prolapse, which is where the cord comes out before the baby, which then if the baby's trying to come out, the cord is being squashed and then the blood is no longer able to circulate to the baby. That was the piece for me that I was like, okay, if that happens, I'm going to hospital. And other people, other people, they'll have other things. And I actually spoke to a midwife after I gave birth and shared everything that happened. And she's like, oh, but if you had a cord prolapse, all you need to do is get your bum up in the air and slide the cord back in and then hope that the body takes over and shifts things. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that bit.
Wow.
So in many ways, for sure, I'm not a medical expert, and there are definitely going to be situations that you do have to go to hospital for. But I think it's really important that people do their own research and get clear about what risks they are willing or not willing to take.
Totally.
And then, there is the giving birth piece, and then there's also the post-birth. And so if there was a hemorrhage, if a huge amount of loss of blood, then that would require going to hospital. But it's also debatable what level is the level that you need to go to hospital for. And at the end of the day, with so much of it, it's how are you feeling? Like, if you're really honest, how are you feeling right now? Are you still feeling okay, or are you not feeling okay? And that's a question that midwives and medical people would ask if you were hemorrhaging. There's different, it's not just about the quantity of blood you're losing, it's how are you feeling, because a loss of one amount of blood for different people is going to equal something very different. And so I feel like with free birthing, it really is learning to listen to yourself. And that was a really important gift, a really important piece. And
wow. I mean, like, what a huge thing. It's like, what a huge amount of responsibility
totally
to have, and also sovereignty.
That was the really big gift that I received from it, really coming into my sovereignty. And we had a doula friend came for half of the labor, and I'd been really clear around I'm not wanting a doula, but For my husband, the type, it was like, I need you to be 100% present. And so if you need for there to be a doula there so that you can be comfortable for us to free birth, then I want you to call the doula. And so it was coming from him choosing wanting someone else to be there to actually keep on top of the temperature of the pool so that he could be totally present with me. And I'm really grateful that he did call her in. And also, in her coming in, I also got to experience how sensitive we are when we're giving birth, and how the subtlest wording of things, how huge of an impact that has on us. And that made me even more grateful that I wasn't in hospital. Just at one moment, there was one thing that she said around, he's not turning, rather than he hasn't turned yet. She said, he's not turning. And how my system was instantly in like, oh my God, he's not turning. Like this wave of panic of, oh my God, am I going to have to go to the hospital? Like in such an altered state in that moment, and so hypersensitive, to have the subtlest of things said can massively impact you and your system. And so I learned a lot in that sense of the importance of, not having those voices coming in. And I have actually been present at a friend's birth before, and we had made an agreement that the midwives were not to speak to her. They were to speak to me or her partner. And I really see the importance of that more than anything in giving birth, having that barrier between anyone else's input. And there were, after giving birth, my husband was able to share that, there were moments that he was scared, that he was like, is this okay? Oh my goodness, she's been going for so long. Is everything okay? Are we going to have to go to hospital? But he didn't share any of that with me. And that for him, he was really kept on coming back to, okay, as long as she says that she's okay, that's the only voice I can listen to. And it's essential that I keep trusting her and keep trusting her and her body's wisdom. And that was his real, continuously anchoring into having to trust me and my body and me listening. And that was, I'm so grateful as well, that he really kept that clear container of he was there for me, being present for me, and not bringing in that personal stuff. Because if he'd wavered for a moment, I would have gone to hospital probably. It was like I really needed him and the doula to be really clear presence that wasn't bringing in anything that might waver me, and just really got to see how fine that line is, how delicate it is.
Wow, I just had full body chills when you were sharing about how sensitive you were in that process. And it's almost like a birthing woman is in the deepest throes of feminine experience, and everyone else in that birth space needs to be pure masculine containment and holding and presence for you to just do the deep surrendering to the wisdom of your body, because the body does know, but oh my God, what it's so incredible and so deep.
Really is.
I've been reading just reading a little bit about how sensitive birthing women are, and really how just the slightest thing, the slightest shift of energy, new person in the space, like you said, phrasing from someone or the tone of someone's voice can actually stop labor.
Totally. An instant. It's an instant. If the body has any fear, it instantly will go to give you the possibility that if we were in a more ancient time, running away from tigers, giving you that possibility that you're capable of escaping from the threat, escaping from the tiger, which if you were still laboring, you wouldn't be able to get away. And yeah, our body still has that same mechanism in play. And the smallest thing that can make us feel nervous or scared can stop the labor. Which then, if you have any fear and you're in hospital, creates this situation where it's like stopping the labor and they're trying to start the labor, stopping the... It's quite a process.
Yeah. Wow. And how long was the labor and the birth? How long was that?
Yeah, my labor was 26 hours. And it was full spectrum. I was in laughter fits. I was laughing hysterically. I couldn't stop laughing. It was just went on and on and on, this hysterical laughter. And then eventually I managed to slow down the laughter, come down to calm.
What were you laughing at?
Nothing. It was just waves of hysteria coming through me. And then when I finally stopped, Matthias was like, "You having fun?" And then instantly I was just in hysterics, laughing and laughing and laughing. Just went on and on. And then other moments where I was in this just exquisite, orgasmic pleasure. And it was just wow, incredible experience that I've never experienced before. And then this other moment much later on where I was tripping. I was really out of it. I was hallucinating and I was going to some pretty dark places. And then I'd have a contraction and it would pull me back into the moment. And I'd be like, what on earth? How was I there when I'm here giving birth? What? And then the contraction would fade. Wow. And I'd be knocked back into another hallucination. It was really dark, uncomfortable journeys that I was going through in that last chunk of my labor. And there was also a moment earlier on, maybe less than halfway through, where I had a sensation of something sliding down in my vagina. And instantly, given my one fear was a cord prolapse, I instantly went into this fear thinking, oh my God, I'm having a cord prolapse. I'm going to have to go to hospital. Totally freaked out. Adrenaline suddenly pumped through my system. My contractions slowed right down. And it wasn't the cord. And it was this huge, almost like a blood clot piece that I was like, oh my God, what is that? And it was actually my mucus plug. But all the photos that I'd seen of mucus plugs didn't look anything like my mucus plug. And so it was also a shock seeing this, what looked like it might be a huge blood clot. And so I sent a photo to our doula and she was like, yeah, it's the mucus plug. I was like, oh, God, it was such an experience. I never got told about that could happen. I'd been losing chunks of my mucus plug for maybe a month before I gave birth, seeing these white chunks of my mucus plug. And so I wasn't expecting this, and I did so much studying and research, and this was never a piece that came up for me. And this is where I feel there's such an absence of information, even amongst women who've given birth, talking to people who haven't given birth. There's so many pieces that don't get talked about. And so we come into giving birth really not knowing anything.
Totally. And there's such a culture, I feel, in our society where it's unless you're working with children or around loads of women who are pregnant, it's don't know anything. No. Don't know anything. And then all the research starts as pregnancy begins.
Yeah. And even then, you don't get all the information. It's the number of women I know who they give birth to their baby and then they've never been told they need to give birth to the placenta afterwards. And so they're in this loved up moment with their baby and then they're being told, okay, and now the placenta. And they're like, what? And then that's a whole nother giving birth that so many people aren't aware is going to happen. And and even with the birthing of the placenta, even with home births, if your placenta hasn't come within half an hour, midwives are giving you an injection to make it come. So there's also not a lot of information out there around how to navigate the birthing of your placenta. Some people's placenta comes within minutes. And for me, talking to lots of different midwives, everyone's being like, never heard of that, totally unheard of. It took 10 hours for me to birth my placenta, or 11 hours actually. It took me 11 hours. At 10 hours, Matthias kept on checking in with me. He's like, is this really okay? And I'm like, I feel fine. Kept on tuning in. Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fine. Yeah. And then at 10 hours, I was like, okay, baby was still attached. It was very uncomfortable. And we wanted to burn the cord, but didn't want to burn it while he was attached. And attached with the placenta inside of me. And so at 10 hours, we were like, okay. I was like, okay, having a little chat with the placenta, letting it know, okay, you've done everything you need. You can let go now. Having a chat with baby, okay, you've received everything you need from the placenta. You're going to get everything from my milk now. And I really thought, yeah, that's all I need to do. And then it's just going to come out. and that didn't work. And then I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I need you to go to the apothecary to get some herbal tinctures for me. Because I'd already been prepared with all these different herbal remedies, tinctures, homeopathy. But there was one remedy that I didn't have, but I didn't think I was going to need it. And she went and they didn't have it. And so she calls me and she's like, they don't have it, but I'm coming over and we're getting this placenta out. And she came over and she did some cranial sacral work on me and she did some pressure points on me. And then suddenly she was like, Matthias, start sucking her nipples. And so Matthias started sucking my nipples. Mom. Yeah, I'm very awesome. So my husband started sucking my nipple. And then instantly...
In front of your mom?
Yes, in front of my mom. My mom holding the baby. My husband sucking my nipple. And then I could suddenly feel these subtle contractions starting to come. And so me and my mom went to the bathroom and she was doing pressure points on me again. And I was finally able to birth the placenta. But that was actually 11 hours. And so it was 37 hours, the process of me going into labor until I birthed the placenta. I was pretty exhausted at that point.
Yeah, that's a feat.
It definitely was. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have this curiosity. Actually, I don't think I've asked any mothers here on the podcast, but what did the contractions feel like for you?
Yeah. So for me, they were really intense from the very beginning. And it's probably not what people want to hear, but I felt like my pelvis was being crushed. But it wasn't like a pain. It's such a, I had, before giving birth, I'd heard people talking about, how some people say contractions are painful, but a lot of women in the more alternative, conscious movement saying it's not pain. And I got it. It's very impossible to describe because it's something I've never experienced before. It wasn't pain, but it was in that realm. But it's an undescribable thing. And I just had to give myself over to them. Wow. And there was this piece where I didn't realize, after each contraction, I didn't realize how much tension I was still holding in my body. I thought I'd let go, but my whole body would still be totally tensed. Yeah. And just needing to be told, soften. And then be like, oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. And then a contraction would come and everything would tense up so tight. And often, I think in the lead up to birth, everything I'd heard, it's like telling you to soften during the contraction. But what was most important for me was actually that once that contraction has passed, because the body takes over, there's not really, in some people might have very different experience of contractions, but for me, there was no possibility of me trying to get my body to do anything other than what it was doing. It was so powerful, this force coming through me. But what I did have power over was, after that contraction had passed, then needing to soften my body back down and needing that reminder. So soften. And I feel like that's the one word if anybody is supporting anyone in giving birth, that's the word I would give. Just keep saying soften, soften. Don't say, oh, you need to relax. It's like, that's so heady, you know, whereas just having someone transmit, soften. That for me, I think, is one of the biggest gifts you can give someone if you're supporting them while giving birth.
It's beautiful. Yeah, softening is such an art and a practice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely not an easy one, but so necessary.
Yes, I agree. So, yeah, Larissa, just to wrap up this topic of free birth, if you could tell a woman listening to this who wants to have a free birth, like one thing that they need to know, or maybe two.
Ooh. Oh, should have prepared for that one. I think to really keep coming back to trusting yourself. Don't let other people's words and opinions come in and sway you. It's so important that you really keep listening to your body, and to also watch the fine line between, is this your head getting fixated on, no, I'm not going to go to hospital, I'm going to free birth, and then you're also not listening to your body. It's really essential that you work on listening to your body and softening into your body. Softening, like, even, you know, although I was talking about it in the labor, it's like softening in your body throughout the pregnancy so that you are able to listen to your body.
Yes. Yeah, this is beautiful. And these are things that women can practice even before becoming pregnant in their daily lives, you know, how to listen to the body, how to connect, and how to soften.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And there's some amazing resources out there with a lot of information of where doulas and actual midwives have come together to create supportive information for people who are free birthing.
Amazing.
So yeah, maybe I can send a link to that.
Yeah. Is there someone or an organization in particular that you really loved? And we'll put it in the show notes.
I'll give you the information. There's a free birthing Facebook group that you can pay a small amount to, and then you can go through a lot of content with them. There's a mixture of doulas and midwives who wanted to support women during COVID who weren't going to go to hospital, rather than leaving them free birthing without knowing what they're doing. They really wanted to be able to support women, and they definitely have some really good content in there. If you're wanting one place with a lot of content, that's where I would go. I can't think of the exact name off the top of my head, but I will send it.
Good. Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. That sounds like an amazing resource.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But soften and listen to your body.
Yeah. And so, Larissa, I'm really curious, and I'm also so excited to hear just about like your journey of intimacy and how that transformed, you know, as starting as a maiden who's also like a conscious intimacy teacher and relationship coach. So yeah, starting from that point of really being embodied in a lot of incredible knowledge and wisdom, to moving into the pregnancy through birth, and now with the son. Like, how has your sex life evolved?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved through so many different waves. I think what I had no idea about was that when you get pregnant, so even if you don't even know you're pregnant yet, you're in that really, really early stage, within that first couple of weeks of conceiving, so much blood flow starts to go towards your genitals and your pelvis. And so your pussy becomes really engorged, and your arousal can really increase. And so during pregnancy, I had like the most sexually aroused experiences that I'd ever had, and just wanted to make love all the time. It was like, really incredible.
Sounds amazing.
It was an incredible experience that I had no idea was coming.
I hope my pregnancy is like that.
And I'd never heard anyone talk about it. And after I got pregnant, I was on the phone to a very close friend of mine, a guy, who he had his children 25 years ago. And I started sharing. And before I even like could fully said what he was like saying, he was like, yeah, sex during pregnancy. It's the most incredible, so much arousal, so much juicy engorgement. And I was like, this is a thing. And I've never heard about this. How is this not being spoken about?
Wow.
It's like, and it was only afterwards like that I found out this is the thing for so many women, that when they're pregnant, they have so much arousal. And so that was a really interesting one. The way that it's hard to explain, but the way that I felt in myself sexually was very different, and it was a very sudden shift. And even though in my pregnancy, I was like, I had no energy, I was so nauseous, I wanted to sleep all the time. When it came to lovemaking, I was like, there was this like wild animal just like coming through me. But it was also a mega comedy sketch that I love sharing about, where it's like we'd be making love and I'd be in this like total wild animal, and then I'd be like, I have to go wee. I have to go wee right now. I have to go wee. And then like other moments, wild animal making love, and then I have to eat something right now. And I have to go and eat something so that I wouldn't be too nauseous. And then other moments we'd be making love, and it'd be like, oh, this incredible moment. And then I go, stop, I have to go to sleep right now. And so I was having an incredible time. And I think that maybe for Matthias, having me as his lover at that time was quite a roller coaster of an experience. And we laughed so much. We laughed so much because it was just such a comedy sketch.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Yeah,
wow.
It really was. That was, yeah. And I think one of my most incredible lovemaking experiences in my life was the night before I gave birth. So it was like maybe 5 hours before I went into labor, that there was such a deep surrender that happened in me in that moment. And I went to such a deep, exquisite place that I had not touched before. And I think that what made it so much more obviously an incredible experience was because although I was in this incredible, juicy, sexually aroused space during my pregnancy, I could also see there was this element of a holding back in, like, I guess in, my body's holding this baby in, so it's not wanting to do a full release. Whereas at that point, my body was obviously like ready to give birth. And so it allowed me to release and surrender to such a deep, exquisite state. And yeah, I think that was the start of my labor, which was so beautiful.
Gorgeous.
So beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So there was that whole wave. And then post-birth, there was this really fascinating piece for me of, in like the days after giving birth, I was still in this very aroused space. And having spent, my pregnancy with big belly, like not being able to like have Matthias lying on me or me lying on him, after I gave birth that day, I lay down on him. And so we were belly to belly in a way that we hadn't been for 9 months. And my whole body just went into this energetic, full body orgasm just from laying against his body. It was like, oh, it was so exquisite. I'd spent months longing to be able to just like really have my body pressed up against him in that way. And it was, a really incredible mix where then I felt like I suddenly had to hold back, that it was too much for my vagina. even though there was nothing physically happening externally, he wasn't touching my vagina, but it was just the intensity of this orgasm that was coming through my body was too much for my vagina, having just given birth. And so I had to pull everything back. And I think at that point there was a slight, maybe a disconnect that happened in me in relation to my sexuality slightly, because there was this, oh, I've got a hold. That took me quite a while to clock that had happened. And then, you know, after a little while of having just had a baby's like sucking like constantly. The longest he wasn't drinking was maybe 45 minutes. So very quickly becoming completely sleep deprived. And if you're sleep deprived, it's impossible to have any sexual arousal. And like there's scientific research you can look at that it's like if you're in sleep deprivation, it's impossible for you to have the space to be feeling aroused. And what's really, you know, I'm really blessed is that me and Matthias were able to have really great conversations, not just after giving birth, but pre-birth. We were already setting ourselves up for, okay, there's going to be this really big shift. And I don't think anything can really set you up for the enormity of that shift. But we were lucky enough to already be having those conversations. And very early on, he said to me, I don't want us to make love for us to have physical sex until you've come back to yourself and feel that you're connected to your arousal and in a place of connecting with yourself first. And only then do I want us to start moving into being sexual. So it was like he really gave me the space for me to really find my way in myself. And it was a long time before we actually had penetrative sex. I think maybe 9 months. And maybe like some months before that, we were being sexually intimate with each other, but not penetrative sex. And it could only happen when I'd really had some time to rest and sleep and be with myself. And yeah, he'd take our baby swimming and I'd be able to have some time to really come back into myself. And those moments of him then coming back and put baby to sleep. And then it was like this moment of having come back into myself. I was suddenly so much more available to connect. And I feel like this is a really important piece that I would love new parents to know. I so often hear guys talking about, oh yeah, they don't have a sexual relationship anymore since they're having a baby and blah, blah, blah. There's this real like, and women feeling really pressured. And it's like, if you're wanting to have a sex life after having a baby, you have got to take the baby away from the mom and give her some space to rest. And not just rest, like she has to have space to come back to herself.
Yes.
And it's like post having a baby, I had no idea that it was going to be the most unembodied experience of my life. Going from having this baby really anchoring me down in my body to suddenly everything, all that exists is this baby and providing milk for this baby, and suddenly having so many things that I need to be in my head to be aware of. Whereas before having a baby, I was so embodied. I was so dropped down and dropped in my body and my sensuality. And post having a baby, I was the most unembodied I've ever been, that there was no way for me to like even connect with myself, let alone connect with someone else, let alone be sexually intimate with somebody else. And so I think that the biggest gift that you can give if you're a partner to someone who's had a baby, the biggest gift you can give them is giving them some space and time, doing everything you can to give them space and time to come back to themselves. And if you're friends with people who just had a baby, doing everything you can to give them space. You know, we were really blessed that one of my closest friends would come over and she'd take baby out for an hour so that we could have time to like curl up and just be able to curl up together. It was amazing. Just being able to lay and cuddle together was so exquisite. And so then when we did eventually start moving into penetrative sex, we took it so slow that initially we literally, I'm going into really details here.
Love it. This is amazing. Keep going.
We started with just like the head of his penis, literally just at the entrance of my pussy. And so it was
So
just
healing.
entering, just entering. Yeah. that was like, I hear so many women talking about how painful sex is after birth, and they're not given the opportunity to go slow enough. And so I feel like this is such an essential piece for men to be learning, not just women, but men to be learning. It's like to take the time to not be focused on getting the sex to happen now, but being part of the journey to creating a healthy, healing sexual connection that might take some time, might take months, might even take a year. It's like after having a baby, the vagina can be really painful for years, even for some people. And I think that there's a possibility, you know, I can't say for sure, but there's a possibility that maybe it doesn't have to take that many years of pain if in the very beginning we as women take responsibility for, I'm not going to let myself be pushed further than is really comfortable. And I think so often women feel like, oh, but I need to get back into my sexual self. And so they push past the pain. But pushing past the pain isn't going to resolve the pain. That's not a long-term resolution. And so to really take the time to really honor what your body has gone through. And so we spent months, I think, of him just having his head, literally the head of his penis just inside. And that was already like a stretch. But that was so beautiful, being able to have him just being present with me like that, and being able to be in my arousal in him just being present with me in that way. And then very, very slowly over time, like he'd start to go a little bit further in. And when we started to really have physical sex again, there were times where then if I was having an orgasm, I'd have to pull him out because it was too painful. So I'd be fine until that moment, but like the strength of my vagina clamping, it was like that would be painful, and so I'd have to pull out. So it's been a really long process and journey. And so now our little one's 1.5 years. So it's 1.5 years since I gave birth, and I still have moments where it's like, oh, that's painful, and we just need to come into just being still, or just to completely come out. It's been a really big journey. And sorry, I've been going.
No, it's been so gorgeous. And I feel like this topic around, you know, boundaries, how we allow ourselves as women to be penetrated, how we, you know, can acquiesce and give in to a man's desire to be inside of us when we're not ready or when we have pain, because I feel like this topic is something that's relevant for so many women, whether or not they've had birth. And if you're listening and you're someone who's actually experienced a lot of tantric bodywork and done that, you know, healing journey of releasing releasing the traumatic imprints from the vagina, from the womb space, you know, from the cervix, from wherever. Like when I'm hearing you talk, Larissa, I'm really hearing that like after birth can be another one of these kind of like healing times for women, and that it's so deeply important to honor that. But I think there are going to be women who are listening to this who potentially haven't experienced a lot of tantric body work and haven't had the yoni massages, haven't done that work. So, I mean, in a way, like when I'm listening to what you're saying, Larissa, which is so profound, I'm like, wow, this even applies to a lot of women who haven't even given birth. Because I remember before I had, you know, gone through my own journey and received tantric bodywork and started making love in a way where my lover could become my healer, which is so possible once we, you know how to hold that and choose men who can hold that for us. It's like, this is such an important journey. And so I'm so grateful to you for bringing this. And I'm so thrilled to hear how your journey has gone, and good for you for choosing such an amazing husband who can meet you there.
Yeah. I am really blessed that I have an amazing husband, and
you're amazing also.
Thank you.
And you could do it with another husband as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you don't have to have a husband who's done lots of tantric work to be able to have this experience. But what you do need is communication skills.
And to know your own boundaries.
Yeah, because I feel like so often in a similar situation, it's like, yeah, but he's overriding. Like, and it's like, no, you override. Like, rather than being like going very direct and saying, hey, because so often there's still so much stigma about sharing what's going on with our vaginas.
Yes.
And what's actually happening for us post-birth. And post-birth, there's no space to have any conversations because everything is the baby. And so it's so important to find little moments where you can still be having important conversations, being able to say, hey, my vagina's still really sore, but I'm so longing to be able to have the space to connect. I'm so tired and I don't have the capacity to be in connection, but I'm really longing for the space so that I can then be able to be in connection with you. And it's like essential to keep that communication and that happening, because also for a man, if his partner suddenly disappears, baby's arrived, there's not only is there not a sexual relationship, but there's no longer a relationship. It's really hard to have a relationship when you've just had a baby. There's no energy to have any kind of connection of any form. Mm-hmm. That creates this tension and this build-up. And we can look at it of like, oh, the guys, they just want sex. They don't just want sex. It's most likely they just want connection. But how do you get the connection when you don't know how to communicate and you don't know how to have connection? And that actually, when there is connection, there isn't that same need that's placed on sex. I think that's a really essential piece and really important as women in this position, being able to say, like, if you are wanting to be in sexual connection and move that forward, being able to say, hey, I'm still in a lot of pain. I'd really love to explore. Like, it requires you to take responsibility for communicating what's actually happening for you and what does and doesn't feel okay. They're like, hey, I really want to try. Maybe it might hurt, and so I might need for you to pull out. I really want to just give it a go. It's like, give them that awareness, because they haven't given birth. They don't know what it's like. They have no idea how it's going to be feeling in your vagina right now. And so communication for me is one of the biggest pieces post-birth.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I feel like for a woman to really be able to communicate truthfully what she needs in these very like intimate and vulnerable situations, there needs to be such a deep-rooted sense of self-worth, you know, and believing that we are worthy to have the relationship of our dreams and to have, you know, a husband who deeply cherishes us and loves, adores us, even when we're not necessarily able to meet him sexually in these times.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that is so hard when you just had a baby. It's like definitely the time when the majority of women are at that lowest place. You know, they're so exhausted, so their self-worth can plummet so easily. And I think this is also where having conversations pre-birth is essential for setting you up post-birth. Being able to know you absolutely 100% require support post-birth. And without that, it's like, I totally understand how women plunge into depression post-birth when you are not getting any sleep, when you're not getting a single moment to be connected with yourself. It's that it's a really, really big piece, and we really, individually, collectively, societally, we really need to work at creating systems that support mothers post-birth.
Yeah, thank you for naming that. I think you've really like brought a very, I don't know, like compassionate, accessible lens for us to understand postpartum depression.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear, like, what was the support that you had that you felt was really valuable, and maybe the support that you didn't have that you would have loved to have. Yeah.
Well, again, I was really blessed. my mum came, and she was with us for the first 8 weeks of Cyriel's life. And that was such a blessing. You know, she was cooking and cleaning, taking Cyriel out for walks so that we could have a nap together. And that is just the biggest gift you can give someone who's just had a baby. Having someone who's cooking and cleaning and looking after the baby is incredible. Such an incredible gift. Yeah. And then having this close friend of mine who, even later on, like after my mum wasn't with us anymore, she would come and take him out for a walk and give us that time for us, being able to have moments that we could really drop into connection with us. That for me was, those two were really, really essential. And also, one thing that I didn't have much of that I really wish I had more of, partially because we're constantly on the move, but to be able to have other mamas around with babies the same age, because I also found it really hard to be in communication with anyone. It's like I didn't have I was not functioning. My brain wasn't functioning in a way that allowed me to really have proper conversations. And being constantly in like baby awareness, like antennas on baby all the time, not being able to hold a full conversations until probably not that long ago, it was impossible to have a full conversation. And so being around other people who weren't in that same frequency, I just found really stressful, because it was like I was trying to stay present for conversations, but I couldn't. Whereas then being with another mama who she's totally used to having half sentences and there's no need to complete the conversation, no need to complete the sentence. That was really precious. Where it was like I could relax, not needing to finish a sentence and not needing to finish a conversation. As much as I would love to have had conversations, they didn't really happen. But that was really precious, having that. And so I think it is really, if you're about to give birth or having just given birth, being able to find some way to tap in to connection with other mothers who are going to have babies around the same age, I think is such a necessity. Also having someone on a similar time frame of where they are with their baby, so you can ping pong around like what's happening for you and what's happening for baby. That's also really, really essential, for sure. Yeah.
Beautiful. Larissa, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. This was such a profound conversation, really just so many moments in this conversation. I've just had like a full body response. And it's just been so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to spend this time with you and share all of this stuff.
So Larissa, where can people who want to learn more about your work find you, and do you have any events coming up? I know you've got one coming out in the new year.
So my website is deepening-intimacy.com, and also on Instagram, deepening.intimacy. And in February, I'm co-facilitating a week-long couples retreat with Christian Pankhurst, which is Heart IQ work. So it's like blending together our work. We've both been working together on and off over the last maybe 5 years or so. And this is really going to be a very juicy, amazing week, blending together embodiment, connection practices, sexuality practices, communication skills, circle work. It's going to be, I'm so excited about it. It's going to be an amazing, amazing event.
It's for couples, right?
Yeah, that's for couples. And whether you've just gotten together, whether you've been together for a lifetime already, what I love about the way that we're working is that we can really meet people wherever they are in their relationship, whether the topics that they're needing to work on are communication based, whether it's more sexuality based, wherever you are in the spectrum of what you're needing, we're going to be really meeting each couple and tweaking and meeting what they're needing. And that also really excites me. Yeah.
It's going to be epic. like if anyone is listening and you're in a relationship and you're like curious to go deeper into your relationship and kind of like, yeah, maybe resolve any like kinks that are going on, as in, you know, kinks that you don't want to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And so that's the only current event that I have that has a date. So that's the only thing that's lined up that you'll be able to find at the moment. I do run women's work and also work for men and women together that aren't couples around sexuality, like reclaiming the power and innocence of sexuality. That's really where my passion in my work is. Yeah, but you can, if you find me on things that will get dropped below this, then you'll be able to find out about those different pieces when they do come out. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Larissa. We'll pop all of that down in the show notes.
Yeah, thank you.
You're listening to the Embodied Mystic podcast. Thank you for being here and for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that it could serve you in some way. I'd love to hear from you. My inbox is always open. Let me know what spoke to you in this episode and if there was a moment that lit you up or brought you into deeper self-reflection. If you loved this episode, I'd be super grateful if you took a moment to leave a review or share with a friend. You can do this easily by visiting the link in the show notes. It's been a real pleasure connecting with you today, and I'll see you soon.